Right. Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Hanlon. I am one of the founders of the Flute Examiner, and I want to welcome everybody to our first featured video interview. I can't be happier than to present this to you guys. I'm really great in front of the camera. I can trip over words with the best of them, so bear with me. But as most of you know, last month was Pride Month, and we would like to continue that theme a little bit and acknowledge some people who are doing some really wonderful things out in the community. And so with me today is Taylor Irelan, and he's going to tell us more about him. And we were talking just a little bit before this about how we first met, whether it was at Wild Acres or that little gaggle of friends called NFA. I don't really know where we first met, but we've been friends, or at least Facebook official, for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
FBO.
yeah, if it's not on Facebook, it's not real. And we just had the privilege of being part of an LGBT choir featuring newly commissioned work by Robert Maggio, which is going to be featured in the Memoriam concert at NFA. And wow, what fun that was! That was a project, and to hear the final product is just impressive. So everybody be prepared for that because I think you're going to really enjoy it. But so Taylor, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I feel like things have changed so much for me lately, as many musicians have after 2020. Things evolve, and so I feel like my about me has changed a lot. But the nutshell of it is, of course, I am a flutist. I am flute three and piccolo with the Venice Symphony. I play with a flute and piano duo with my dear friend Andrea Feidel. She's a Croatian pianist, and we have been playing together for about 6 years. We do a lot of new music. We like to do commissions and premieres. That's a big passion that we are growing and evolving. I am the artistic director of the Tampa Flute Studio here in Tampa, Florida, where I reside and is home for the last 6 years. And that has been an evolution in and of itself. For those that know, it started out as a studio, turned into a flute shop. We were one of the only flute specialty shops in the southeastern US. It got big very fast, and it was more than I could just handle. And I started having people come in for help. And eventually, it led to me calling Flutistry for help. And so, Flutistry came down, and we started teamed up with them. And I stepped back from flute shop and sales to really focus again on my performance aspect and a lot of outreach. So, that's my sort of like professional bio. With the artistic director, I still lead. We have an amazing faculty of flute teachers here. It's great to collaborate with them. We have a fantastic community here in Tampa, very supportive of one another. But I've been getting a lot more into advocacy as well. So part of that like partnership with Flute is I started a project Flute as a Drag for the last few years that I've been working on and developing both virtually and at conventions. The first convention was last year at, I believe it was last year, yeah, 2020, right
Mm-hmm.
before pandemic hit at the Mid Atlantic. And
Mm-hmm.
then was supposed to be at NFA last year. Will be at NFA this year. I'm a co-facilitator with LGBTQ youth at the Metro Wellness Center here in Tampa. Which is fantastic. I love working with children. And then I also try to be a big advocate of teaching those with on the spectrum. I have quite a few students that are on the spectrum, and there's not a lot of research about it. So that's something I'm really passionate about is talking and advocating for education and working with people, especially music lessons that are on the spectrum. And then let's see, I graduated from the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, where I got to study with amazing teachers, Sarah Newbold, uh, Ian Clark, and Philippa Davies. And then I did my undergrad at the University of North Florida, and I studied with Rana Casano and Les Rutkus. And those five teachers are my shining stars of making me who I am as a flutist and really as a person today, plus many, many mentors along the way that I definitely pay tribute to for being where I am today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, no one would recognize any of those names.
No.
So with this past year, like you said, everything's kind of been put on hold or at least on pause. How have you taken advantage of this time, um, to further the advocacy or to dig deeper into your passions?
You know, one of the things that I talked about a lot before the pandemic was entrepreneurship with people. And I talked about what I thought of my career is having a lot of pillars to sort of hold myself up. And so I had my hand in a lot of different things, from performing to teaching to the flute shop to other business. Um, and even though it was all music, it was all quite overwhelming. And if anything, 2020, I kind of was able to take a step back and realize I I lost a few of those pillars, and I was grateful that I was still able to survive. I had a platform where we did a fundraiser with the Tampa Flute Studio for Florida orchestral flutists that lost their positions, and I think we raised like $3,000 or $4,000 for them, um, and that was great. But then I really 2020 taught me how important, really for myself, personal development and outreach was. I realized that before that, I was on this journey of really trying to be big, successful, famous, rich, cliche, and it is just hard. You know, you're just your tunnel vision of I want to be successful, and I realized that a lot of the things that really meant a lot to me, I didn't have enough time for. And so I decided to kind of take a step back and say, well, what do I actually want professionally? What do I want personally and emotionally to be fulfilled? And I wasn't fulfilling my own desires. You know, on the surface, and I think this is a big lesson for all of us on social media, on the surface, I was very successful, but I was not very happy. And I think 2020 was a wonderful journey for me to really think about what would make me happy. And I took, as I always tell people, I took a lot of pay cuts in a sense of I let go of a lot of the financial pillars that I had. But I realized that out of all of my pillars, and this is a lesson to myself, I never had an emotional or personal pillar. And that was the one thing I was missing in my life. And so doing all of this advocacy is so fulfilling. And I'm in a much happier place. So I'm still making a living as a musician, which of course is important.
Yeah.
I still have to pay the bills, but I think that was what 2020 was really big for me.
Wonderful. Yeah, having that time to self-reflect and having basically the rug pulled out from underneath so many musicians and performing artists that we have to in some cases reinvent ourselves or find a new path, or really it challenged us to figure out what we really were passionate about. So I'm glad you had that opportunity and that you're finding your way again, and that things are looking up for you because you look like you're happy. And
Absolutely.
I just, yeah. So you have this project that you've been working on, and I find it really so interesting and much needed. So tell us a little bit about that project.
So my pianist and I have been talking for years about recording an album, and it's again one of those things that gets put on the back burner because who has time to record an album while they're doing all those other things? Certainly, it's not one of those things that makes money nowadays. So it's, but I think also part of it was there was a lot of pressure of like, well, we wanted to do something that was meaningful, or that at least we responded well to. And we talked over different themes. All of our programs and concerts, live concerts, are always themes. So of course we had to have a theme. And we finally, over 2020, we were like, well, now's the time. Let's use this time that we have now to really sit down and plan this album. And it sort of hit me with all of these things that I thought, oh, well, why don't I just work with LGBTQ plus composers and feature stories from, queer composers and artists? And that's something that I would totally resonate with. And uh, so, yeah, so I spoke with Andrea about it. She was, thrilled. She was like, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's do it. So we started putting together our call for scores. You know, and our biggest thing in our call was that we really wanted something that actually told the story. It wasn't just about identifying as, you know, queer, but it was also about writing something that told the story, their story, really. And then it kind of all, like, you know, that was just us thinking about what we wanted to record, and it kind of became a thing in a big way because I did not expect to have this sort of huge backlash. I started receiving messages of hate. The posts that I was posting were getting flagged, taken down from all over. And this was all from people within the music community. You know, this is not just anywhere online or whatever. And I was just in awe, like, you know, dozens, probably close to 100 messages of just this hate-filled stuff about why we're even doing this, why wasn't even important, and why did it matter if anybody identified as that, and why am I doing an album about that? Like, don't we have enough stuff? And um, yeah, and a lot of them were saying, you know, there's tons of gay composers out there. Like, why do you need, you know, like, why does it matter? It never stopped Tchaikovsky or Copland, you know. And it was shocking because I've done a lot of stuff to try to be an advocate or to like do something with a mission of making a difference. This was not that. This was me looking into my own identity of what can I identify with and actually tell a story that I resonate with. I happen to be Irish, and I said, you know, to me it would have been no different if I said I want to make an Irish album, you know, and looked for people to write pieces of Irish music because that's part of my heritage. You know, being, you know, a queer person is part of who I am. So I feel like I can tell that story and share the story of people in my community. And it wasn't, it's funny how it wasn't meant to be an issue. I didn't do it, you know,
Right.
I do stuff to be makeup, but this was not to do that. But I'm thrilled. We did our call for scores. We have 6 amazing works picked out for it. I couldn't believe the amount of submissions we had, the quality submissions that we have from really all over the world. Somebody from South Africa, somebody from Hong Kong, somebody from Ireland, a couple people from the United States. Um, and really listening to them, like going through these pieces and playing through them, I got teary-eyed on some of them. I mean, it really is amazing to like see these stories firsthand, and they really took it to heart. You know, like so many of this, you could tell they wanted to tell their stories as queer musicians. And so we just officially notified everybody. So actually, I thought I was going to mention the names, but we haven't officially announced anything yet. But we'll be making an announcement of exactly who they are soon. We're going to start a campaign for funding the project as well for the recording and everything. Um, but yeah, it's something that I'm really excited to work on. I'm a big advocate of new music, but more importantly, I think that, you know, for me personally, I identify with stuff that's a storytelling. I've always loved anything that tells a story. So that's what I'm most excited about this project, is it really is a compilation of a lot of different queer stories. So yeah.
And I think the LGBTQ plus the community, we all have our stories, good, bad, and other. And I think it's important that we're able to share and tell them. And I saw some of the negative comments that were posted, and it was a bit of a shock to see that it came from the musician community. And you know, we were all struggling in 2020 and trying to be supportive of each other, and just to see that, you know, there are people that we work with
Mm-hmm.
who can be so negative about something that is very important to us. And so I think what you're doing is wonderful, and I look forward to it. And if you let me know when the list is, everybody's notified, depending on when this video gets produced and put out, we can actually include that whole list so they get some
Awesome.
notoriety for it too, because I think it's important to promote that.
Absolutely.
So you know, I look forward to hearing the recording, and just I love hearing you play because you're such a wonderful player and so passionate, and everything you do has so much energy and compassion behind it. So this interview and hearing about your project is just wonderful, and I appreciate you taking time to share it with us. And for some people, I think stories and advocacy and sharing this type of stuff, whether they're in or they're out or whatever the case may be, whoever they are, hopefully something will resonate with them. So I appreciate that. So do you have any other projects coming up, or some future goals that you want to share? Maybe it's top secret. We don't know yet.
Well, I think, well, first is freaking out about making this first album.
Because
But
that's always easy.
always so easy, so easy. Well, we're planning, we've talked for the longest time about possibly, going further with our duo. A lot of we obviously both have more connections in Europe, having me studying there, her from there. But we really want to finish this album this year so that way we can take it with us. And promote it. Where there are several other works that were submitted that I wish I could make 14 albums because there was so many amazing things that came in that we're going to still be performing a lot of these works that we did get submitted. We talked to a lot of the composers, and again, we were just overwhelmed with so many of these wonderful stories. So that's kind of our mission, is to still get these other pieces out there and heard. Um, yeah, and then there's a piece that I wrote that's going to be on the album. We'll see if I get back into writing. I again, and all that getting busy, you like get so busy that you don't even have time to do things like that, like write a piece. So, but the piece that I'll be writing is the title of the album that I've written is the title of the album, The Journey, and yeah, and then so we'll be traveling around with that. Orchestra season's coming up in the fall, which will be really nice to get back into actually playing real concerts in person. And yeah, I mean that's kind of it. I'm just trying to like catch back up into life
And
and not all flute.
well, and I know, like, once the album is out and released and people get to hear the music, are there plans to make the publication of the music published? Is it going to be published so it's available to the rest of us to perform or play? Or I'm sure you've hashed all of the details out at this point. But I know that when I go out and do things for my clinics for Trevor James, I try to feature music by female composers, music by LGBTQ plus when I can, when I'm able to do it, because I don't always have a pianist available at 8 a.m. in the morning, and actually rarely do I have a pianist available when I'm on tour. But I do try to feature some of those works as well, and so I do appreciate, and it's a lot harder to find that repertoire than people realize,
Really is.
for a number of reasons. So I think it's great that you're bringing a whole new list of repertoire to the corpus of music, from the LGBTQ plus. So thank you for doing that. And I know that once people get out there and they hear this and they hear the project that you're working on, that people are going to inquire about publication. So keep us posted,
Yeah.
because we would love to actually, we probably love to follow up. I would love to follow up with some of your composers and just do maybe another part of this interview just to talk to some of them about their journey. So that would be really lovely. And if you're in contact with any of them, please let them know that I would love to get in touch.
Absolutely. There'll be, yeah, will be one of our biggest things and part of this project was to promote their works and their music. And so we definitely want to get their music out there and make sure we promote them once they're published. We also will be doing, over the next month or two, you can look out for, if you want to follow me on social media, I'll be posting some interviews with the composers as we announce them. There will be some to really hear their backstory because, yeah, again, it's nice that there's some really, you can tell some true meaning and heart to these pieces. And then of course more interviews and stuff with them is always fantastic. And yeah, I mean these artists are just brilliant in their music making, but really what uh, I just am so excited about is their stories and stuff, you know. And I think that especially as composers and even musicians, I think there's so many competitions and things and stuff out there that yeah, we're focused on like quality of music, and of course that's true, but very seldom in these types of situations do we actually get to put our own personality into it and tell our story and have that be the focus in the feature rather than how complicated virtuosic flute piece can I write for this album or whatever.
You
So
know, sometimes the simplest melody says the most. So, yeah,
absolutely.
excellent, excellent. Do you hear that?
There might be something. I might have somebody at my door. I should probably go check it.
Okay, I'll wait.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Is he is he gone?
What happened to Taylor?
Um, I don't know. First, I just heard this really loud bang. It woke me up from my nap, and I came and I saw some lights and cameras. And hello, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm
I'm a
doing
bit. I'm a big
fantastic.
fan. I'm a big fan.
Oh,
So thank you. It's nice. This is a really great surprise. Um, I guess I'll catch up with Taylor later.
I know. I mean, I was just having my, beauty sleep, enjoying my life, and I don't know what happened to him, but oh well, you have me now.
And not our problem. So I'm very honored. This is just so much fun. I know who you are, and I know a lot of people out there also know who you are. But for those subscribers that don't know who you are, would you please take a moment and introduce yourself?
Well, hello, hello, hello. I am obviously a famous drag queen, but I am not RuPaul. I am Miss Kylie Fortissimo. I am the alter ego of Flutist Irelan. I have been in existence for about 15 years now. She's a teenager. So, of course, my drag persona has been around for a while, since pre drag race. I have kind of been on the scene in many different ways, doing, nightclub gigs to brunches like Hamburger Mary's. And over the years, I just sort of decided to meld the two passions and artsy sides of myself and created Flute as a drag. And Kylie Fortissimo is the byproduct of the crazy kookiness of a flutist who was bored.
That's quite a backstory. So what? I mean, what drives your passion to do what you do?
Well, oh, that's a loaded question.
Are there any other kind?
Let's see, get the tissue box out. I'm just kidding. So, as a queer person growing up, I was forever bullied for being too effeminate, for, not being into very boy things. And I tried my hardest to suppress all of that and try to be what our society deems as masculine or heteronormative. And I did not succeed in the slightest, despite all of my efforts. And I'll never forget the first time I went to a gay club and I saw my very first drag show. And here on the stage, I saw uh, gay men, openly gay men, obviously, in drag, that were not only celebrating their femininity, but everyone around them was celebrating their femininity. And they were, almost like the local celebrities of that. And to take something that I had been bullied for my entire life and see other people that were thriving because of it just inspired me to get to know it more. And so I had a friend of mine put me in drag for the first time, and I looked horrible. And I was devastated, and I thought, I'm gonna be a terrible drag queen. So I never did drag for like years. I was like, I'm gonna watch from afar. I won't do it. And then finally I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try it myself. again, I look terrible, but without YouTube and all of that to learn, I just had to kind of experiment. So over the years, I just like with music, I practiced and worked hard and developed this alter ego. And for the longest time, I did not want anyone in the music world to find out about it. It's sort of this underground thing, especially when I first grew up and started doing drag. Drag was really seen as cross-dressing. It wasn't an art form. There's a lot of negative connotations with it, a lot of sexualized things, adult-related things, and that's not what I did with drag. However, I just knew that as an early career flutist, I did not want anything. I was already afraid about people knowing I'm gay, let alone doing drag. And I had many mentors suggest to me to combine the two in my undergrad and grad school. And I always brushed it off. And I always said, well, let me prove myself as a professional first. And, over the years, I've been able to kind of unwrap what that means. What does professional mean? And how is being myself or being authentic unprofessional? And I think that's something we're struggling in the music community between, different races and cultures and things like gay people. And what does professional mean? How can we represent ourselves authentically and not be seen as being unprofessional? So after a number of years of being a professional and kind of getting bogged down as one does, the classical music world can be very overwhelming. Doing auditions, competitions, whatever, you get bogged down. And one thing that drag has always been for me is it's been an outlet for humor, and that sort of fueled my drive to finally combine the two and create Flute as a drag. And it all just started that I thought, I am so tired of how serious we are. I need a joke. I hate how we always talk about how classical music is too elitist and we need to be more open to the public, but we're elitist within ourselves. We take ourselves too seriously. So, yeah, so then Flute as Drag was created, and I am astonished by the overwhelming amount of support that has come from it. Of course, there's some naysayers, but who cares?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it kind of, I mean, we can, I think a lot of us can speak to this, that that classical music being a little stuffy, jewelry, tattoos, certain hairstyles, all of those things were frowned upon, and that, I mean, that's like very minimalistic things that don't define who a person is, and even instrumental stereotypes. Flute is a girl's instrument. Trombone is a boy's instrument. Those gender norms, it's you're challenging all of those and facing them head on. And I think it's really important what you're doing. And it is starting to be celebrated. Would you like to tell us about some of your high marks here that you've got coming up?
Absolutely. So I was thrilled to be invited to perform and present at the Mid-Atlantic Flute Fair last year. That's sort of the first convention debut with Flute as a Drag, and it was so much fun. And to go along with what you were saying, I was terrified to show up at this convention in drag. I mean, I hate to speak about my own community, but you go to flute conventions and they can be pretty darn stuffy. And
Amen.
I just knew me showing up. But then I thought about all the people that are different, marginalized in our community. And I thought, you know what? If I can walk through that convention center in high heels, rhinestones, and huge purple hair, then maybe they can feel a little more comfortable. And that inspired me to continue to do it, because it was sort of, do I do this? That one was kind of, I was like, is this a one-off or is this something I'm going to keep doing? And thankfully, I submitted a proposal to NFA for last year as well, for 2020, and Jennifer Grimm, the program director, super believed in my vision And these things have been uh, pr- uh, proposed before in the past. I've been let know that there have been lots of LGBTQ stuff, lots of drag stuff that have been proposed, and there has never in the history of any flute convention been a drag performer. I was the first at Mid Atlantic. I'll be the first at NFA, but it's not. I'm not the first to try, so I don't want to act like I'm this trailblazer, the first to do it. I'm the first to have the opportunity to do it, and and the reasons for being so have not been necessarily appropriate. People don't think we're appropriate. They don't think that it's appropriate for all audiences. As if being gay again, as if we're, you know, bad or wrong or, cannot be presented in a professional manner. So, uh, Jennifer Grimm believed in our vision and thankfully asked us to do even a little more with it and had us do the late night cabaret. So 2020 was uh, postponed into 2021, and we were hoping for in person, but of course, with COVID, to be safe, we are doing virtually. So we're still going to be the late night cabaret, and I'm super excited. It's a lot of times been sort of different types of music, whether it's jazz, salsa music, different types of things that kind of get the party going at the end of the day of the convention. So we thought it would be a great idea. So I'm going to be joined by some dear friends of mine. So we have Tuta LaForza, aka Tim Hagen. We have Juilliard, who is Tyler Manzales, and we have Miyazawa, who is Norman Manzales, who will be joining me at this Flute is a Drag. We're calling it a celebration of LGBTQ plus extravaganza. We're going to be having performances on flute. There are some original and world premiere. The piece that I'm working on is a world premiere, or will be performing, is a world premiere of a piece called Finding Your Inner Diva. And it is something that was written by a good friend of mine that I went to school with in London. And he is a queer artist and composer, and it's been such a fun project to work on. I'm excited to share it. Hopefully people feel like this starts to kind of make sense in what we're doing, that there is validity in having our LGBTQ plus identity be part of who we are as an artist and what we present. And then I'm working more on my web series. I started the series right before the pandemic, and I'll be the first to say the pandemic wore me out emotionally. I thought everyone could use cheer. I wasn't ready to give cheer at the moment. So she's ready. She's ready to give cheer. I have a few videos recorded already that I'm just waiting to edit and upload. So there'll definitely be more content coming out for that. And we're talking about doing some touring as well. So now that the pandemic is starting to lighten up, hopefully Kylie can take to the road and touch many more people.
Wonderful. And I encourage all of our listeners, viewers, and subscribers to check out your videos. There's so many points that you make, and it's entertaining. And I still think my favorite is all of the divas you meet at an audition. That's got
Yeah.
to be my favorite video, because I think we've all experienced that situation and met all of those characters. So it's so much fun, and I appreciate what you do. Um, it's I think it's a wonderful thing that it seems like that the world is moving a little more forward to be inclusive. Um, I know that sometimes the news makes it seem that it's not, but I think we're heading in a good direction. So, and it's people like you who are pushing through those boundaries. So,
Mm-hmm. Oh well, thank you, thank you. Well, I think it's important for people to also see. I think what does still happen. I'll be the first to admit that get I live in a very safe bubble. The people around me are super supportive and loving. I've built that for years. We always talk about in the LGBTQ plus community that we make our own families.
mm-hmm.
And I don't speak to all of my blood related family. Some of them support me, some of them don't. And I choose to not surround myself in people who don't love me authentically. And so, sometimes we get caught up in this bubble. I live in a very supportive area where, I could walk out of my house in drag and not be afraid. That's not the case in many parts of the country. And there's still danger out there. And there's still a lot of places where it is not safe to be gay. It is certainly not safe to be trans, to be a person of color that is queer. There's so many dangerous areas. And, I think we're constantly surprised sometimes to be like, oh yeah, like there's still so much work to do. Gay violence is up, trans violence is up, even though we technically have only had the right to marry 5 years. Some people feel like everything's okay now, and it's not. And even though, I do these things, as we mentioned earlier, well, Taylor mentioned earlier, that there still is a lot of online hate. There's a lot of hateful comments. I've seen some on my Flute as a Drag videos. And as much as I want to be a beaming light and have everyone be positive, I think it's also important to highlight that there are still many people that not only dislike what we do, but do intend harm for our community. And so that's why this message and this vision is so important, and why, again, I think that if I can show up here and do this in a bright pink wig and advocate, then hopefully, students and younger people in our music community can feel safe and comfortable. I want to create a world, and we need to create a world to do that. So,
Well, and I think, excuse me, I think that it's important what you're doing, but it's also important for people who are listening and watching this video to understand that if you do have a friend who is LGBTQ plus, um, we do make our own families because sometimes we can't continue to exchange with our current or our blood relatives. And for some of us, like me, I've gotten a lot of support from my blood family. But I also lived in a bubble, but I've had my own experiences of discrimination and hate. Thankfully, they weren't violent. But if you talk to your friends in the community, they've got stories to share, and we cover our wounds and we hide it very, very well. And there are a lot of us who are not as forefront like you are, out there on the stage performing, drawing attention to what is happening. We have our stories too, and they're painful, but we pursue and push through and make things happen, and no one else would ever know. So I think compassion is important. So I love what you do. It's
thank
choking
you.
me up a little bit.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you're exactly right, and I think that like you said, so many of us cover our pain with humor, and I think there's, every community has their stereotypes, and everyone has that funny gay friend, right?
Hmm.
And we oftentimes do deflect to humor, and I think it's just important to know, it's like, I think we've all learned through mental health, check on your friends that are the funny ones,
Yeah.
check on everybody that
Yeah.
and another thing that I think is important to note and add is that, being LGBTQ plus is, we are an invisible minority, meaning, when we are, it's not enough to, for instance, in the music world, just program people who identify as LGBTQ plus, because unless we literally walked around with some sort of pride flag, I'm gay, I'm trans,
Hmm.
most people aren't going to know. At least we'd hope not,
Yeah.
right? And that's one of the hard things. It's one thing in, working on the diversity and inclusion committee with NFA. It's one thing to advocate for women and to see more women on the stage, but for people in our community, we don't know. And a lot of people try to say, oh, well, I know lots of gay flute players. But if you're a young student that's coming up, it doesn't say on somebody's album, I'm a gay flute player. Now, mine's going to say that, but, there's not a lot, and I think that's important, is that's why visibility is important. So a lot of people wonder, why do you do this? Why is it so important? They always say, why do you throw it in our faces? Well, we haven't had visibility. And so it's important to know that we are an invisible minority in that sense.
For myself, and when I do what I do, which is nowhere near it nowhere near takes the time to get ready like yours does. um, but I always think about being that the young man going through school, not having a role model, and how scared I was. And so when I'm out there doing what I do, and a young person sees me and connects and says, "Oh my God, it's somebody like me."
Yeah.
That I may never know that that person or that student had that connection, because they're likely still scared about their realizations, self realizations. But if that helps them get through,
Hmm.
then that's enough. So I think I think what you're doing is wonderful, and I look forward to seeing so much more from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, anything else you want to add to let everybody know? I mean, I'll put links and things in the video, or not in the video, but in the article, and we'll keep people in tune with what's going on, and maybe we can do this again.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, well, by all means, so check us out at NFA. There's so many, as you mentioned, there's the other group that we're doing. There's so much visibility at this year's convention. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jennifer Grimm. I think she has created one of the most diverse and inclusive programs ever in NFA. And I hope that we continue that on. Um, be sure to check out the videos. Reach out to me if you have anything, if you need somebody to talk to, if you're a
Yep.
young little person in the community and you need somebody to talk to. I'm on social media. We also have a Facebook group that is open to queer flutists. That is a safe space that we get together and we do some social meetups, because again, you know, it can sometimes feel lonely. And so by all means, I just want everyone to know that you are loved and you are special, and no matter where you are, who you are, you can always sit next to me.
That's always the message, and I appreciate so much of what you're doing, Kylie, and how you're sharing your life and your work with us. So please, let's set up another time to chat, or tea time, as it were.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
only next time maybe we'll do evening tea with some wine.
Oh, yes, yes, please.
So thanks again, and if you happen to see Taylor, could you tell him that, he kind of ditched us?
I'll let her know. I'll send a text or something.
Yeah, or whatever.
Whatever.
Well,
I mean,
thank you again, Kylie. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to
thank you.
seeing you in person. We'll do a photo
Yes,
op when we can
yes,
actually do it together. Um,
yes.
and uh, and I'm sure I'll see you at Mid Atlantic and NFA in the coming years as well.
Yes, thank you again, Keith, for having me so much. And yes, I cannot wait for us all to be back together in person and have all the photo ops. And if I'm out and about as Kylie, everyone stop me. We'll take a picture. We'll take a selfie. I don't know how to take a selfie. I'm an elder millennial, but
You know, as I understand, it's just not cool to use the selfie sticks, so leave that at home.
I have
Um,
little T-Rex arms, so mine don't come out so well.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the Flute Examiner and myself, um, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and take care, everybody.
All right, bye everyone.